Tim Pool's Squid Game take. That sounds awesome. That sounds incredible. That sounds like worse than the average PragerU video. New hit TV show, Squid Game, is actually a critique of communism, not capitalism as creator intended. That is a bold, bold take. That is a really bold take. Like, a show that is essentially about like a bunch of people forced into debt slavery, where even like the workers who are oppressing them are treated like cattle, is somehow not a critique of capitalism. Well, personally, I think it's not really a critique of capitalism, but not in the way they think. I think it's more like a critique of like bad capitalism. Because you could like abolish personal family debt and still have capitalism, which is what most of the show is really about. People who are in debt. You know, like the problem, for example, with the Pakistani guy was that his boss didn't pay him the money that he was owed. So from that, you can take like, oh, well, if he was paid the money that he was owed, things would have been okay. So is it a critique of capitalism? Yeah, but kind of a mild one. And it's a critique of problems that could potentially be fixed within capitalism. Not really a critique of like relations of production or like the commodity form or anything like that. It's more debt.
Talk about Squid Game.
Yeah.
We should talk about Squid Game.
Yeah.
What about it?
So I think Squid Game is, I don't think it's overtly political. Apparently, you know, you were telling me, Gary, that it was like, there's like a political message in Squid Game.
Yeah.
It's the most overtly political. Like you can throw the most obvious political messaging at these people and they just won't get it. I've never seen a show that is more of like a sort of specifically crafted analogy than Squid Game. Like it's like Animal Farm level of like obviousness. Here's these people who are playing children's games for their lives in order to get out of being in debt. It's the most obvious, like outlandish thing imaginable that is obviously specifically crafted in a way as to allow the creators to, like, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief to believe it, right? In a way to like make a point, make a political point. It's so obvious. But obviously Tim Pool with his fucking beanie is so fucking stupid that he doesn't even get it.
Right, or at least that's what he said.
My takeaway from it was communism bad. That was my takeaway from it. Okay, so now I'm going to say this for those that are listening. Spoiler alert, if you haven't finished Squid Game, it's an awesome show.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, everyone. Spoiler alert. I mean,
I prefer watching it in the original Korean with subtitles. I think it's fantastic. With the dub, you lose a lot of that like reverb and like natural sound. It's kind of weird. So spoiler alert. I'm going to say it again. We are going to spoil this show to
Kingdom Come.
To Kingdom Come. There we go. Spoiler alert. So what was it about? You mentioned that the creator...
By the way, since we're in spoiler alert, mute the stream right now. You have 10 seconds if you don't want spoiler alert. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. The entire thing, according to the show, was set up by a businessman who was bored because he figured, he was like, you know, I got all this money. I'm still fucking bored. I guess there's only one thing left for me to do. Spend it on making poor people kill each other for fun. He sees that and somehow he thinks that it's a critique of communism. He sees that and somehow he imagines it's a critique of communism. It's literally a critique of wealth accumulation. Like it's explicitly saying that wealth accumulation is unfulfilling and pointless past a certain point. And he sees that it's a critique of communism. He's so fucking stupid, this guy. He's so fucking dumb. It's unbelievable. Anyway, let's continue watching Tim Pool.
Brett said something and it was like...
The creator called it a fable for modern day capitalism, but also for life and the competitiveness of life. And that message...
You see that he said modern day capitalism, right? What that means is that like capitalism used to be okay, I guess, right? It was at some point okay. That's what I mean, right? Like, is it anti-capitalist? Well, sure in a way, but I think that it focuses on like bringing to light issues that could be solved within capitalism themselves. So it's not like explicitly against like relations of production. Like you could imagine like Squid Game being okay with things like if businessmen were nicer and paid more and there was no debt. There was no personal individual debt at least. Basically Islamic capitalism. We need jizya. We need Islamic banking. Thank you.
It's not subtle at the end, which I won't ruin for anybody, but it's not subtle at the end. And that messaging was there, and you know, some people can't get past it, and I understand that, but I thought it was a damn good story.
But what was the messaging? Like, what do you think the message conveyed?
Well, basically it's a cold and cruel system. There in that fable, you know, there is no resolution except for at the end they create their own enemy, quote unquote. But that's what I got out of it.
All right. Just for context, okay, because those of you that are sticking around, even though we told you spoilers are here, I'm going to give you the quick breakdown of the show. It's a bunch of desperate people in debt. And then all of a sudden they get an opportunity to play in a game. But the game is brutal and you die in it. But if you don't, you win. I think it's like equivalent of US like 35 to 40 million dollars is the translation. So it's like 45 billion Korean won or something. Now we're going to get into again, I warned you, spoilers. I think the whole thing is the perfect example of somebody who thinks they're opposing capitalism, but just makes communism and wokeness look really, really dumb.
Wokeness? What does wokeness possibly have to do with it? Because it has one immigrant in the entire show and everyone else is a Korean. Oh, there's also the North Korean immigrant too, but there's 2 immigrants in the entire show and that makes it woke? What does that have to do with anything? Oh my God, it's so stupid. He's so dumb. The reason that he's wearing a beanie all the time is because underneath, like his skin has been replaced with glass and you could see that he has no brain. Okay, that's why.
The show ends up being, in my opinion, more anti-communist than anything. So one of the big themes in the show is that everyone is equal. They all enter the game as equals, and they're allowed to play as equals. And there's an arc in the show where it's like somebody violates the equality, and so they kill him. And they were like, that's the worst thing you could have done is strip the equality. But now...
I mean, that entire part of the show... Wait, let's see what he gets from that before I reply.
Here's how the show ends. You've been warned. In this equal system, everyone dies but one person who gets all of the money. Huh. Okay, so that doesn't sound to me like capitalism. In capitalism, we recognize not everybody is equal.
No, I mean that's literally the idea. That's the idea behind. This is so easy to respond to. This is fucking child shit. Okay, the idea behind the creator, or at least the guy who ran it, which was like the boss below the creator, was that like everyone here is like, you know, equal in the game to win the money. That's like what capitalist ideology says. Everyone has an equal chance to rise up in the meritocracy. Equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's what people like Tim Pool and others say. Equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's what it is. Like you bring these people in there and you give them a chance to like play against each other on an equal footing, but all of them except one must die. That's literally the most explicit critique of the idea of capitalist meritocracy you could possibly imagine. In order for one person to succeed, hundreds of others must fail. And in this case, literally die, failing in the most extreme way possible. It's so, like, come on, man. I didn't even have to think about that. It was obvious. I didn't even need to think about the refutation to his argument. God.
Everybody does have an equal chance. We do want equal opportunity, but some people are poor and some people are rich. In this system, everyone is wearing the same clothes in the same room, being brutalized by the powers that ultimately result in one person having all the wealth and everyone dying. That is not capitalism. In capitalism,
it's literally an explicit critique of capitalism.
There's too much food. People are morbidly obese, and there are homeless people who are fat.
Does he think that like African countries, like poor countries, aren't capitalist? I'll give you a bit of a spoiler there, because there are, and people there are very much hungry and they don't have enough food to be fat. It also makes no fucking sense, because you can be fat and still be poor. Like, does he think that like the only thing that there is in life is eating food? Sure, you can be homeless and be fat because, you know, a bunch of people passing by buy you McDonald's, but that's not going to solve your fucking debt or anything like that.
In communism, everybody wears the same clothes. They have
no, they don't. They literally don't.
limited access to anything. They get garbage food every day. They're like, okay, the game's over.
What does this guy think that they think that like he's talking about like a prison here, by the way. This is what prison is. Everyone wears the same. They get the same garbage food. He thinks that communism is just like a prison. Like it's just a prison, nothing else. That's what communism is.
Here's the food you get, and they get trash. Yeah. And they're fighting each other because they're starving. That to me is an indictment of communism. And if this guy who made the show is actually like, it's actually capitalism that's bad, I'm like, it just goes to show this is a
How is it an indictment of communism? Every single person is there because they are in so much fucking debt that they decide that fighting to the death against 400 other people is better than living in that debt, which has been thrust upon them by the fucking capitalist system. And then they are put into an environment where it's like, well, you know, here it's equal, here it's meritocratic, here the best among you is going to win and be able to overcome their debt while everyone else is going to die. That's capitalism. That's literally the most obvious critique of capitalism imaginable. He's so dumb.
Person who made a great show but was really dumb and didn't understand they were actually critiquing communism.
It's like they took him out of a capitalistic system where
all these people are so dumb.
Doing pretty bad to a communistic system where they were doing really, really bad and were executed by the state, which usually happens under communism.
Right.
I mean,
for like childish whims.
Exactly, and that's literally what happens under.
Like these people see metaphors as literal, solely literal. The reason why they're so confused here is because the people died, right? You see, in capitalism, you know, someone doesn't literally shoot you when you fail. That's how they see it. Like they can't take the metaphor like, so one person rises to the top and gets all the money in this supposedly equal game and everyone else dies. They see that exclusively as like a literal metaphor. Oh, but if Elon Musk rises to the top and makes billions of dollars, the poor people who are $50,000 in debt and homeless aren't literally killed. They're just $50,000 in debt and homeless. No shit, Sherlock. Like, metaphors don't have to be completely literal. It's essentially saying hundreds of people must fail for one person to succeed under capitalism, to succeed to like the extent of being like, billionaires. That's what it's saying. Very obviously.
Communism. Look up, what happened in China, what happened in Russia, what happened in...
These people just like literal bots, man. This is bot shit.
In Europe as well. So there's a long history, there's a long context to, people just being purged, taken away. Another very interesting aspect of that story is the masks that the very rich people were wearing were kind of similar to the same masks that the Rothschilds were pictured wearing at some of their private parties and galas a couple decades ago. So I saw that right away. I was like, wait, that's the elites doing this. And, I thought of the movie.
These people think that they're not defending the elites, that they're not the kind of people who would defend like the Rothschilds. Or is this just like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory or something?
More of a critique about the ruling elites, because it's essentially, again, spoiler.
If it's a critique of the ruling elites, it's a critique of capitalism because we live under capitalism and the ruling elites are all fucking capitalists. Oh, they're so dumb.
Rich people coming together to watch the average poor people, struggling people kill each other.
Exactly. That's what it is. He sees that and he somehow thinks it's communism. They're so dumb. So the rich people come to watch the poor people killing each other for fun, and that's communism somehow.
Over money. And there's some important kind of parallels there. The series is kind of gory, so if you're sensitive to that stuff, I wouldn't watch it. I watched it, I was like, Tim, you gotta watch it. You're like, eh. but you watched it, and it is very thought-provoking. It is very emotional, and it definitely pulls at the heartstrings in many different ways.
I looked this up. Luke, you ain't kidding.
What is this?
There's a bunch of photos from this Rothschild's party where they're all wearing these masks that are similar to the Squid Game thing.
Yeah.
But that's probably what he was doing, the creator.
Yeah,
it was a guy, right, who created it? I'm saying.
Well, the story. I'm hearing a lot of different.
creator.
I'm hearing a lot of different reports about this guy saying that he lost a bunch of teeth because of the stress during the production of this movie. I heard that he tried to get this movie done for years and it kept getting denied. So
it's a series.
Yeah. The series. But yeah, I remember seeing those masks, automatically thinking, wait. I saw these masks before. They're at the private galas and private meetings of the super rich that already do take place when you do look at the very powerful people in our world that manipulate the system for their own personal benefit.
I'll put it this way: capitalism isn't the problem. Communism doesn't exist. It's just this idealized system. We might as well call it unicornism. The real problem is corruption and corporatism. And the left says capitalism when they mean corporatism.
I think
these people just don't know what capitalism is. Capitalism is a system of relations of production. Are the means of production overwhelmingly in private hands and are companies run in order to make profits off commodities? Yes. Okay, it's capitalism. Simple stuff. And it's not fucking hard, man. Corporatism, like whatever you think corporatism is, it's still capitalism.
that's exactly the problem. I think that's what he's doing with the masks. He thinks that the Rothschilds embody capitalism. They do not.
No,
they embody elitism.
They're the biggest.
They embody elitism, not capitalism. So the Rothschilds, who made their generational fortune off being some of the most brutal early capitalists imaginable, do not embody capitalism. This is insane. This is like saying Stalin does not embody fucking socialism or communism, or at least these people's idea of it. It's amazing.
Promoters and pushers of communism and destroyers of actual real free markets. Another interesting aspect
Real
was the
free
fat
markets.
guy. I mean, he looked almost exactly like Newt Gingrich. I talked to Newt Gingrich a couple times. I went up to him, asked him straight up to his face, hey, what did you do at the Bohemian Grove when you shipped in specifically male prostitutes?
Now, some random conspiracy theory about a very specific personality in the US.
It didn't exist. They said it didn't exist a few years ago. And I was there at the...
Doesn't exist.
Bye-bye.
Crazy.
Yeah, I remember there being like, this is absolutely absurd. But when really rich people do come together, they do really weird stuff. And there's a lot of weird stuff that I even experienced at Bilderberg. There's even weirder stuff happening at the Bohemian Grove. And this is some of the stuff we know about. What about the stuff we don't know about? So I thought this was a...
Again, like talking about really rich people and somehow the really rich people being critiqued. The creator, he clearly had people like Epstein and his list in mind, which includes Trump, by the way, when he was sort of designing this sort of thing. And these people somehow think that's an example, not an example of capitalism, when really rich people do really fucking fucked up shit with their money. That's somehow not capitalism.
Perfect time to talk about the bigger elements of these elites who do very sinister.
People who got rich, by the way, specifically off their private control of the means of production. They're profit-seeking. But it's not capitalist somehow. These people are so dumb. There's no point even remotely trying to respond to them.
That was me, the larger conversation of Squid Games.
But that's always the criticism is always the corrupt elites. I don't, when they talk about like, oh, communism, they never actually.
Yeah, like if we wanted to get rid of these people's wealth, these people would be against that. It's not like they're against them at all. These elites represent the result of the system that these people support.
Implement it because it's not possible. It's impossible to do. And then when they criticize, when the left criticizes capitalism, they're really just angry. They're elites with centralized power, able to do really messed up things and get away with it because of how much power they've accumulated.
Yeah, so somehow, if we had perfect free market capitalism, there would not be elites with centralized power, even though the fact that there are elites with centralized power is the result of free market capitalism, which resulted in them gaining obscene wealth and influence over politics and then taking it over, which is pretty much exactly what Marx and Engels predicted about what would happen under capitalism.
That's not what capitalism is supposed to represent either. And the problem is communism doesn't.
It's not supposed to do anything. Capitalism isn't an ideology per se. The ideology came after it. The ideology was built to justify the economic material system, like the relations of production and commodity production, etc. It wasn't something that someone argued for and was then implemented, like, for example, communism.
Right? They say that every time they try it, they get some weird form of, genocidal authoritarianism. Yeah. Capitalism at its root is just people with capital from their work can reinvest that into making more projects.
People with capital from their work. That doesn't make any sense. I think he's confusing capital as in the means of production with financial capital.
However, in our current system, which mixes it, we end up with a lot of corruption, and then you get a left saying, aha, this proves capitalism doesn't work, and it's like, no, actually, the problem is the corruption. Yeah. I don't care who's doing it or why, corruption bad.
When you use the power of government to destroy your competitors in the, quote, free market, that's not a free market.
That's not the free market.
That's communism. That's government direct intervention into the free market. That's
when a powerful capitalist influences the government to favor their own interest, that's communism. And by the way, when powerful capitalists influence the government to favor their own interests, what they want from the government is that it does less to limit them, okay? They want a freer market to benefit themselves. That's literally it. These people's ideology are completely in line with what the most powerful business interests all want, all would prefer, that would benefit them the most.
Preventing the market from being able to express itself, from being able to speak for itself.
The market expresses itself. The market expresses itself and speaks for itself. Okay, I'm done. This is so fucking stupid. This is abominably stupid. I can't stand it. That's the end of Tim Pool. No more Tim Pool ever again, hopefully. I don't want to die from alcohol poisoning tonight, so I'll stop there.